Donk Nation, Jackson, Janet's greetings and welcome to your daily dose of donkey with Ginger. It's your boy, the Viking Donkey, bringing you some nonsensical Steelers talk. Not a whole lot going on in the offseason in terms of Steelers land, but there is one big story we have to get into, and that is the extension of Alex Highsmith, keeping him around as a Steeler for a long time, I guess, at least for the next foreseeable 5 years, we'll call it. That means the Steelers went ahead, gave, I guess you'll call it market value. The dude had a lot of sacks last year. Not the greatest against the run, but these premier pass rushers is what the league is now. He fits the mold very well, works really well opposite TJ Watt, and has put up the numbers and stayed healthy last year, which was my biggest question about him being a little undersized, to where 15 million a year seems about right where it should be. Not a bad deal for Highsmith, not a bad deal for the Steelers, and gives more money into that defense that now really needs to step up. Still a young offense that doesn't cost a lot of money, and more money now being invested in that other side of the ball means we really need to see the return of a steel curtain type of thing. But I didn't say it before, this is Nonsensical Steelers Talk, and I am the Viking Donkey all by myself, as this is how it seems to work. Every now and then, you have to listen to me, my inner monologue, my inner thoughts. And I decided we're going to keep it short. We're going to keep it sweet. We're going to do a list this week, but it's not going to be a Steelers based list. Rather, we're going to start talking the top 5 quarterbacks that I can remember. These means quarterbacks that I have seen play in my lifetime, whether it be on television, whether it be in person, but just quarterbacks that I can remember. And if you want to put this into perspective, really, the first Super Bowl I remember happening that I have a good memory of is Kurt Warner winning the Super Bowl with the St. Louis Rams. So that leaves guys like John Elway, who played during my lifetime, but when I was really young, Steve Young, Troy Aikman, Dan Marino, leaves all of those type of guys out of contention for this list. And really, since I believe that Rams Super Bowl was the 2000 Super Bowl, that tells you it's essentially a new millennia list, how I view the new millennia of quarterbacks. And I'm going to start my list saying the people I have on it and not telling you the people I leave off, because I want to wait for the controversy and the questioning to happen till after my list, so the reasonings are listened to, maybe a little more so, but I highly doubt it because everybody already has their list. Everybody already knows who they love during this time frame, and if I don't put them in your spot, you'll be like, wow, you're crazy. Now, criteria for me when it comes to quarterbacks, clearly you have to put up big numbers. You have to do it for a long time. You have to have not only regular season, but more importantly to me is that postseason success. And you have to be that linchpin of a franchise, which is where it gets a little questionable for me, because what makes that the case and what makes these guys stand out? Because there's a group of guys who just missed that I'm going to tell you why I feel they just missed and why I feel Super Bowl success is vastly important, but not the only thing, because if that was the case, Eli Manning would make my list. And that is the one spoiler I will give. Eli Manning most certainly did not make my list. But let's start at the bottom. At number 5, I got a guy who at one point was the most accurate passer in NFL history, a guy with huge stats when he played for the the Saints. And that is, of course, Drew Brees. No doubt, first ballot Hall of Fame guy, absolute stud. Won a Super Bowl down there in New Orleans, but only won one Super Bowl. Early part of his career, not the greatest when you look at what he did with San Diego. Big rumors he was going to go to Miami to be with Nick Saban. Injury kind of prevents that from all happening. And then the rest is history. Things he's did with Sean Payton down there in New Orleans. Brought that city back from devastation. Brought that city a championship, and just has the overall great numbers that lets you put him there. Number 4, we come in with the rose-colored glasses, the Pittsburgh Steeler, the Ben Roethlisberger. 3 Super Bowl appearances, 2 Super Bowl wins, one of them not really his own doing. But as you see later in this list, not the only person who had a Super Bowl mainly based off the defense, but a guy who has longevity, led a franchise, never really had a losing season going out there. This is the type of guy you want to talk about. Winning football, good stats, transformed who he was from a take a hit pocket or a take a hit non-pocket passer early in his career, always with the deep ball, to the last couple years, that pocket passer, quick guy to keep his longevity going. Didn't lead to really as much success in the later half the last decade. The playoff success was just avoiding the Pittsburgh Steelers at that time. But a guy with another first ballot Hall of Fame credentials, the multiple Super Bowls, no real MVP passing trophy type of guy, but record for most 500-yard passing games. Something that doesn't get talked about enough is Big Ben had the ability to put up the big numbers. It's just he didn't do it in a way that was every game because you play in the AFC North, you're not going to be able to throw it pretty all the time. But a guy who, as many other people will see, a dude later on this list really hurt potential of their I don't know, their legacy is going to show up later in the list because, well, he just did it to everybody. But Big Ben to me comes in at number 4. And that leads to number 3. Another guy who came in, terrible rookie year, had some struggles in his last couple years when he moved from the Indianapolis Colts to the Denver Broncos, but he did win a second Super Bowl, having arguably his worst season of his career, but won the Super Bowl because, hey, sometimes defense can do it for you. And that, of course, is Peyton Manning comes in at number 3 for me. Guy with a lot of big stats, a guy with 2 Super Bowl wins. Sorry, Drew, that's why you're not up here in this conversation. But Peyton Manning was a guy who a lot of people say is that GOAT of this generation, was the best passer of this generation. I mean, don't get me wrong. Peyton Manning was great. Being surrounded by great wide receivers your whole career. You're talking Marvin Harrison. You're talking Reggie Wayne. You're talking tight ends like Dallas Clark. Big time running backs in there in the mix too. But that's what these good quarterbacks do. They make great players around them. They put out the dog and pony show, so to speak. But Peyton Manning just never seemed to overcome his bugaboo of a Tom Brady type quarterback. Never really seemed to outperform him in those moments. Yes, the regular season numbers, the statistics are crazy good. The postseason numbers even look good. But what's really ironic is you could argue the 2 worst postseasons Peyton Manning ever had were the 2 seasons his team won the Super Bowl. And that's just weird to me because you figure these type of guys are the guys who are going to put the team on their back and put up the crazy numbers the years they win the Super Bowls. I mean, look at the guy behind him, Ben Roethlisberger, that pass to Santonio Holmes is legendary. To me, there's just not that moment that speaks to Peyton Manning, but I wasn't a huge Colts fan, and I really don't remember either Super Bowl other than the defense for Denver just setting the tone and winning the game before the game even started. It felt. I don't remember the first one with Indy that well because, well, not a huge Indy fan, so didn't really pay too much attention. But no way can you ignore the career Peyton Manning had. No way can you say he's not a top echelon quarterback. That's why he comes in at number 3. Number 2 for me is a guy with an arrow pointing absolutely straight up, and that is Patrick Mahomes, already a multiple-time Super Bowl champion, MVP already in his young career. And the dude just does things I've never seen done. People want to talk arm talent. People want to talk leadership. People want to talk about winning. That is this dude, and he hasn't even hit the midpoint of his career. He's a guy who's proven to be, you could pay a quarterback and win. That really was not a thing that took place prior to this happening. You paid a quarterback, you ended up in salary terrible spots, and your team ended up in a bad situation. But Patrick Mahomes, absolutely killing it. The play I will always remember is that play where he's running to the sideline about 40 yards from the end zone. It ends up as an incomplete pass, but who cares? He's running out of bounds. Looks like he's looking out of bounds. He just turns, whips the ball, and hits the wide receiver 40 yards down the field in the face mask. Like, that is unbelievable. The things this guy does, no look throws, left-handed throws. He is changing the way quarterbacks play. You go out, you watch college games now, you watch high school games now. Kids are trying to be Patrick Mahomes already, and why not? This guy is only number 2 because his career's not done. I have a feeling he has the best chance of anyone to challenge the number one spot, the GOAT, the man, Tom Brady. Without a doubt, the best football player I have ever seen because all this man does is breathe winning football. Say what you want. A lot of people want to argue the Belichick Brady thing. Brady left the divorce and was won a Super Bowl. Belichick hasn't really been the same since the divorce. That is what it is. Do I think they're the same without each other through the whole part? Heck no. Those two work perfect together. That's what made it beautiful. But I think Tom Brady is the greatest football player I have ever seen because he played the most dominant position in my era, which is quarterback, because they made the rules to where these guys are what matters. And he just did it in a way no one else was capable of. Yeah, there's controversies. There's the Tuck rule. There's Spygate. There's all this looming over. But this is a man who's won 7 Super Bowls. That's more than any franchise, okay? Let's just put that on the table. This is a man who brought New England into relevancy. This is a man who went down to Tampa and put them over a hump they couldn't get through since Brad Johnson was their quarterback. And that defense was the best thing you'd ever seen in the early 2000s. This is a man who was unstoppable. Couldn't be beaten by the Ben Roethlisbergers, the Peyton Mannings, any of you Philip Rivers lovers. We'll throw him in there too. Those generational quarterbacks that always get talked about in the AFC that just could never get the job done because of Tom Brady. Just absolutely insane what that man was able to do through his career and then do it into old age, into the 40s, that no one else had ever done, no one else had ever been successful in. I mean, my goodness, my wow is all I have to say about that career. And we can say that now as we firmly believe it's finally fully over. But who knows with Tom? He's retired once and then decided to come back. He might take a couple years off, pull a Gronk, and come back. Who knows? But a guy who just, and that's the thing that made it special, is it didn't matter who you put beside him, he was going to make them look good. Randy Moss's career is over. He goes and catches 20 touchdowns. He turns Troy Brown into a household name. You just keep going. That list of people who is there, obviously Gronk being the exception because Gronk is Gronk no matter what, but that's it. I had to put the GOAT at number one, at least the current GOAT. Baby GOAT's on the way up. Let's see what happens there. So that's my list, 1 through 5. Here are some people I definitely considered putting in it, but didn't make the cut for me. That would be guys like, oh, Eli Manning doesn't make the cut for me because regular season success isn't there. To me, though, Eli Manning is the only guy who can be called the GOAT Slayer, as if it wasn't for Eli Manning, Tom Brady would have 2 more Super Bowls and a perfect season on his record, and that would just be absolutely nutso. But Eli, one of the bottom guys who didn't really make it for me. Also in that list, I guess you'd put the guys like Steve Young, Troy Aikman, John Elway, Kurt Warner, who I remember more so Kurt Warner's career, but those guys I remember, and maybe I saw a little bit of them, but they just weren't. They might as well have been Joe Montana, who I didn't really have a memory of. Who, yeah, I know he was great. I've seen highlights of him. I've seen his stats, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I didn't know. I never saw him play really, and I didn't get the great feel of them being a field general. Then you have some names on there who I remember as a little younger, but I don't remember them being anything but the twilights of their careers or the midpoints of their careers. That's guys like Brett Favre, some great, great passers in there. You also have, who else should we put in this list? Because there's one I want to end it with, and I'll explain my reasoning for him being there a little later. But you have the great arm talent guys. You have Steve McNair. I guess he wouldn't really make these kind of lists, but those good quarterbacks of the time. And now let's get to the obvious name that I left off that everyone wants to talk about. Philip Rivers, right? Nah, I'm just kidding. But Philip, if you ever had postseason success, and maybe if you come back and have postseason success, I would consider putting you on this list. But as it stands now, no. But shout out to that draft class, Roethlisberger, Manning, Rivers. Really good trio right there. There's a couple other newer ones that are pushing it, but good trio to come out of that. But of course, Aaron Rodgers. How do I leave Aaron Rodgers off the list? That has to be the conversation. That has to be the talking point, right? I agree with you. And I'm full heartedly going to tell you right now this is why Aaron Rodgers gets off the list. Yeah, the arm talent's good. Yeah, the stats are good. But when you put it to it, he played in the NFC in an era where Tom Brady was the AFC. So when you're talking Roethlisberger gets to 3 Super Bowls, wins 2. You're talking Manning gets to multiple Super Bowls, has a couple wins. You're talking those guys are beating Tom Brady to have to get to the Super Bowl, or at some point they have to compete with him in the year. I know there was an injury year. We won't talk about that. But you're talking the AFC has these 3 juggernauts. Who the heck did the NFC have at that time? Eli Manning, Donovan McNabb, Michael Vick for a little bit. I mean, yeah, there's a guy who I left off the list too who's a pretty stat guy, but I don't want to talk to pretty stat guys. But to me, there's not there's one gleaming moment that keeps Aaron Rodgers, and for that matter, Drew Brees, because let's be honest, Drew Brees is in the same boat. The reason Drew Brees beat out Aaron Rodgers, which is what it really came down to, which one Super Bowl guy do I like the more? The reason Aaron Rodgers loses out to Drew Brees is Drew Brees right now has the better stats. Aaron Rodgers can absolutely still add to his, which is the thing. He can have success in New York and maybe playoff success, and that will move him up. But for right now, he has to stay below Drew Brees for me because overall statistics, Drew Brees has Aaron Rodgers beat. But Aaron Rodgers, still playing, has the potential to move up. Maybe even past Roethlisberger for me, and maybe even past Manning for me. But right now, to me, he's a lot closer to that second stack of big statistic quarterbacks who just haven't had the success. And the reason I say that is, again, in the NFC, he should have had so many more big time playoff performances, big time, making Super Bowls than he did. And I understand you can make all the arguments. Well, the team was never there. They never invested around Aaron. Yeah, but at some point, Aaron has to step up. They never invested around Tom Brady. It didn't stop him. Patrick Mahomes loses some of his best weapons and just makes the next guy look just as good. That's the thing that I don't see from Aaron Rodgers. And that's why him and Drew Brees, another guy that I'll say is in this, but someone had to make that 5 spot of who I remember. And it was a big debate for me. They're not that far away from being Matt Ryan, who had a great career. If Matt Ryan doesn't blow that lead to Tom Brady, is he in this list? That's a big possibility. But because he blew that lead, he doesn't have that Super Bowl. He's an MVP guy. He's a guy with great stats, might end up as having the most yards and touchdowns. He was what he was on the pace for. You're talking Matt Ryan's a guy who could have been on that list. You're talking, if you just want to look at regular season stats and talk about how great they are and how great their numbers are, then we have to start talking Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins because the numbers those two guys are putting up are absolutely astronomical as well. But again, just no big time success. What keeps Rodgers above that level right now is that one Super Bowl win over my Pittsburgh Steelers. But there's not that, to me, that first Super Bowl is a must have moment. It's why to me Dan Marino doesn't rank as highly as maybe he should because you have to have that shining moment to be talked on that shining stage. You don't have that shining moment, it's a big blemish in the resume. It doesn't mean the resume can't outdo it, but the ring looks a lot prettier or is worth a lot more with a real diamond than it is with that, what is it, zinc zirconium or whatever it's called. You need that real diamond. But here's the thing. When you offset that diamonds with more big diamonds, it makes it look even better. So while, yeah, the casing for Aaron Rodgers is good, the arm talent's good. I can't say the best I've ever seen because, well, again, Patty Mahomes is here to talk. It's just the housing's great. It's just not as full as some of the other housings that maybe don't look as good on the outside. To me, the Super Bowl is the inning workings. It's once you open the doors, what do you get to see? It's pretty on the outside. The inside's bare, is what I will say there. And that's why Aaron Rodgers didn't make my list. I guess that means it's time for a shout out. I don't know who to give a shout out to this year. You know what? This year, wow. How about just this week? Donkey, how about we keep it there, huh? Let's keep it small. Let's keep it going. The shout out's gonna be Alex Highsmith. kudos to you for getting paid, young man. Keep up the great work and absolutely keep up those sack numbers and making the Steelers defense feared. Now I'll let you know, I am the Viking Donkey. That's Viking_Donkey on Twitch and Twitter. Your daily dose of donkey with Ginger is a YouTube channel where you get all this fun content, the nonsensical content. We will talk to Gingy. We will talk to Laskers. Not sure when. Gonna be a little weird the next 2 weeks. You're probably gonna get a pre-recording ones. So if crazy Steelers news happens and you don't hear it on the next couple episodes, don't yell at me. I'm away doing fun things that are gonna take up time, but I'll make sure to put something out there to keep you hopefully entertained, because that's what I try to do. That probably means a couple more lists. Let me know your list. Let me know so we can have a debate if you'd like to come talk list and tell me how crazy I am for leaving people out. But Donk Nation, Steelers Nation, I guess it's time to go. That means wave them if you got them. Here we go, Steelers.